Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the difference between science and what Schumacher calls degenerate scientism, which is a distinction that we're not always entirely clear about, and often we're not clear about it at all. Or we might not even know the difference. We probably don't know the difference. So what's being shoved on us the whole time from all sides is without any doubt degenerate scientism. Degenerate scientism manifests itself in the form of information we can't question, hard data, you might say, facts and figures and all that kind of thing. Essentially, it comes in the form of what is really nothing more than dogma. This is this, and we can't question it. We all know what dogma is. Dogma is just the infinite obstinacy of belief. It's true because I say it's true. Or it's true because I won't hear anything to contradict it, which is the absolute hallmark of human psychology. We all have our beliefs, and we all are not at all interested in looking at our beliefs as mere arbitrary beliefs. We think of our beliefs as being our connection with reality. I know it's true. We feel proud about our beliefs. We say, I believe, in a tone of pride. All it means, though, is that we've closed our minds. Belief always means that we've closed our minds. A belief can only stay as a belief because we never question it. We never take on any information that might contradict it. The matter is closed. The matter is final. This is my belief and that's it. And there's this intense sense of something. It's a sense of righteous validation that comes upon us, which basically means we're totally smug about it and complacent. And the guy across the street will have a different belief, and he could be totally smug and complacent about it as well. And so there we have the conflict that is born of thought, just like Krishnamurti says. Thought fragments us all into different ways of looking at the world that are definite, for sure, but they're only ways. So when we step into a particular way of seeing the world, it seems definite, but there is an endless number of different ways. So rather than seeing this and marvel at all the different ways they are to see the world, so that the world is like this amazing jewel, as someone has said, with many, many facets. I think it was one of the quantum physicists, one of the original physicists from the first half of the 20th century, first bit of the 20th century. It's like an incredible jewel with lots and lots of facets. Each of these facets is a different picture of the world or reality. And when we behold the jewel with all the different facets, we obviously don't buy into any one particular facet, but we can see the complex structure of the whole. But we choose one way or another without realizing that we are choosing just to focus on one facet, and we get trapped in it. We get trapped in the groove, which is what Carlos Castaneda says in one of his books. Trapped because we're hypnotized by it. It controls the way we see the world and the way we see ourselves. And we are ourselves, when we adapt to a particular rational facet, we are ourselves nothing more than a reflection of that facet. And that's why we're trapped, because we can only exist if this facet is the one and only true way to see reality, because we ourselves are a reflection or copy of this facet. So in one way, there's validation in that because there's so much certainty. And in another way, we're being totally controlled and we're completely alienated from reality as it actually is. We've been turned into a somnambulist, in other words, a sleepwalker, incapable of having any relationship with a wider reality whatsoever. And everything we do is determined by this facet which is controlling the way we see the world, this facet of the jaw. So the individual facets, not only do they trap us, but they control us. They determine what we think, what we see, what we like, what we don't like. And very often this is exactly what's said about society, that society controls, tells us what we want, tells us what we like and what we don't like. And then we go, oh, I like this, with that particular type of nuance, as if this is a free thing, like I freely, out of my own volition, out of my own discernment, I like this. But that has been decided for me. So any airs and graces that I might give myself about it are completely ridiculous. It's the same with beliefs. As I was just saying, we're very proud to announce our belief, but really we don't have the belief. As has often been said, the belief has us, and we parrot it, imagining that it's actually coming from us, rather than us being controlled by some mind virus that has taken possession of us. So that's what belief is. It's a mind virus that possesses us and causes us to be its slave in all things. And it also causes us to not see ourselves as being slaves, but as being freely fighting on behalf of what is right and true. And that is the story of the human race. That's what we always do. We become controlled or possessed or predetermined by these beliefs, and then we battle it out with everyone else who doesn't have the belief, and we try to make them have the belief. And when we have kids, that's what we do to our kids. We make them have the belief as well. And in doing so, we imagine we're doing something really good. We're spreading the light. We're teaching people the truth. So it's as if on the one hand, we're completely controlled by something outside of us, and yet at the same time, we're able to feel that we're completely autonomous, completely free, and be proud of that. So it's a very absurd and ludicrous situation to be in, and this is the situation of psychological unconsciousness. This is what it is. That's what it always comes down to. But come back to the point about science versus degenerate scientism. So degenerate scientism is so-called absolute knowledge that scientists have proven. So we can see this coming up in media all around us. Scientists have proven, and that makes us feel good inside. It feels us all warm. Just to know that scientists have proven, whoa, that feels good. Experts have shown. Oh, that feels really good. Experts have shown. Not just Tom, Dick, or Harry has shown. Or I met Harry or Tom in the pub and they told me over a pint, which fellows are inclined to doing. But experts have shown. They've shown in a scientific way. So that feels really good. That's ontological security right there in a very pure form. And so we like that. We like the ontological security. And at the same time, we get to think we're being scientific. It's not like people used to be in previous eras, poor superstitious creatures that they were, believing in what a bunch of idiotic priests told them because they're afraid not to. We can laugh at them, but we're scientific. So we say, and that's how we get our validation. But science isn't actually anything like that. Science does not prove, even though we very much think it does. experts, scientists, I won't say the word experts too. I feel sickened by even by the mention of experts. In the psychological field, obviously, if it was an expert in something else and I needed their help, I wouldn't be sickened by that notion of experthood. But when it comes to anything like psychology or the spiritual field or anything like that, you don't want to hear about experts, because that just means they want to bully you into accepting what they say because they are experts. And that's a state of heteronomy. That's a state of being controlled. That's a state of being brainwashed. So you don't want experts in that field, really. Because how do they get to be experts anyway? There's no science there. No real science there. Science doesn't prove things to be absolutely true. If it did, we would soon get to a point where everything is known by the process of proving stuff or showing stuff or finding stuff, and we'd know everything about everything, just about, maybe apart from a few little details, and we would look upon this as the goal of science. Most people would probably, well, a lot of people would probably think of this, even if they're not consciously articulating, as being what science is all about, to know everything. But science doesn't do that. According to Richard Feynman, one of the things he says about science is that it's kind of like a way that we have come up with to prevent ourselves deceiving ourselves. So we can't really trust ourselves because we are so very, very, very prone to deceiving ourselves. In other words, we see what we want to see and hear what we want to see, and we don't even know that because we think we're being open-minded. Every closed-minded person thinks that they're open-minded. No one says, I'm closed-minded. If they did, they'd be open to the possibility that they're closed-minded, and then they'd be open. They wouldn't be closed-minded. So when science makes a finding, or when you as a scientist come up with a hypothesis, you'll do your very best to disprove it, because that's where the rigor lies. You really will work hard, sincerely, not a token effort. You'll sincerely try to disprove your own hypothesis. And this is the very, very basic philosophy of science. And if you can't do that, then we say, well, you as a scientist will say, well, for the time being, we will accept this as being provisionally true. And what happens is that something else does come along in time, and then we have to let go of that and look at things in a different way. So that's the way science progresses, not by creating a world of absolute truths, but by questioning our so-called absolute truths and seeing what remains when we have shown that all our absolute truths aren't really so absolute after all, but merely a reflection of our assumptions, which we didn't examine. And if we don't examine our assumptions, then we get a definite picture of the world arising. We get facts and figures, and we get absolute truths. But that only comes from not questioning. The more we question, the more that kind of stuff disappears. It would be more accurate to say that science shows how we can't know in an absolute way. We can know in a provisional way. We can take a particular viewpoint, take a particular stance, and there is a view of reality which is associated with that viewpoint, which is associated with that stance. But it's not an absolute reality, because there's no such thing. So that might not be apparent in most scientific disciplines, but it has become apparent in the kind of cutting edge of physics, because we've found out that the assumptions we use to guide our experiments, to guide our ways of collecting data or measuring things, determines what it is we get back. And that's all very well on the face of it. You might think, okay, here's an idea, and you'll think, oh, that's good. I'm learning something here, but we're not. We're just encountering our own assumptions reflected back at us. So really what this does, which is kind of at the core of quantum physics, is that we get baffled. This is kind of state of bafflement or perplexity. If every stance I take or viewpoint I take when I'm examining reality will find a reality to confirm that stance, then I'm really tricking myself if I think I'm discovering anything, because I could equally well look at things a different way and discover something else. So what I do at that point, as a true scientist who is not interested in the comfort of deceiving oneself, is that I realize I can't know anything, and that's the meaning of relativity. All knowledge is relative to the way I choose to look at things, the standpoint that I take, the assumptions that I make. All truth is relative. And relative truth doesn't mean anything, because relative truth isn't truth. It's just a reflection of whatever I choose, wherever I choose to start off from, reflected right back at me. So I'm learning nothing, even though I think I'm learning something. So really, relative truth, far from being, even though it can be useful in a pragmatic way, philosophically, psychologically, whatever, there's no point. It's not useful because it's a trap, because it is a very, very good trap. And the nature of the trap is indicated by Robert Anton Wilson's saying, what the thinker thinks, the prover proves. So we're tricking ourselves the whole time and we don't know it. And because we're able to trick or deceive ourselves in this way without knowing it, our knowing of what we think we know is our trap, is our prison, is the end of our curiosity about the world. So, looking at this way, as science writer John Horgan says, we end up with science evolving into limitology, because science shows us the limits to what we can actually know. We can know more if we fool ourselves. We can know everything if we fool ourselves, as any dogmatic believer will tell you. But that's only the deception. That's the trap. If we're not interested in deceiving ourselves, then we realize there's limits to what we know. And from the point of view of the ego or self, which wants ontological security, which wants ground to stand on, basically, solid ground beneath its feet, this is a disaster. It's a worry. It's a big worry. Things can't be wrapped up. The universe is enigmatic. It's not something to be solved like a Rubik's Cube. So in Degenerate Scientism, we treat the universe as a puzzle that can be solved. It's a very, very difficult puzzle, but we can solve it. And when we've solved it, it'll be like, great. Maybe we'll get a Nobel Prize. We'll definitely get a Nobel Prize for solving everything. The first person to come up with the theory of everything. And people are still looking for the toe, the theory of everything. Einstein was looking for the toe. And it's good to look for it, because it's only if we're looking for it you discover that you can't find it. So it's good to look for it. If I was to find that theory of everything, bang, that's it. A Nobel Prize wouldn't be enough, because Nobel Prizes are awarded for smaller discoveries. You need to invent a whole new type of award for this. It'd be something else. You definitely, you'd be making statues of you everywhere. And that would be great from the point of view of degenerate scientism, because there'd be no need for us to fret, because the Rubik's Cube had finally been solved. Science doesn't show that, though. What science shows is that the universe isn't a Rubik's Cube. It's an insoluble enigma, just as Umberto Eco says. It's an insoluble enigma. From the point of view of the security-seeking ego or self, that doesn't feel very good because it's wide openness. It induces vertigo, as Kierkegaard says, the dizzying freedom. It induces anxiety, got nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to stop us falling. We're just falling in this abyss. But from the point of view, a more rounded whole point of view, i.e. when we're not just a little ego clinging onto whatever validation it can get hold of. And there is that possibility of us kind of moving beyond security seeking. Security seeking means just finding good ways to deceive yourself. So obviously there's other possibilities apart from that. There are more noble possibilities than that. That's not a very noble possibility. It has to be admitted. We can be sympathetic to it, but we can't see it as being in any way heroic or anything like that. It's the exact opposite of heroic. It's ignominious in the extreme. But that's how we are. So we can see that. But if we had moved, even by a bit of a way or an extent beyond the need to validate our delusions, then seeing the relativity of all knowledge, seeing that the whole of everything can't be solved or laid to rest or summed up in some kind of equation, it's of course it's marvelous. Obviously, it's like having the horizons from our petty and mundane, grey, bureaucratic world suddenly lifted, so we can see actually it goes on forever. That's the real world. We've come out of Plato's cave. We're in the real world. But humanity is divided in the sense that we can be in two modes. We can be in that mode where to see these infinite vistas evokes the state of awe, as John Bennett says. And what John Bennett says is that's one approach to eternity, to this thing, to the vastness, to the limitless horizons that just goes on and on forever. When you're not in Plato's cave, you can see across the fields and the trees and clouds in the sky. And that's the natural nature isn't limited in the way that human constructs are. So we leave the construct and we're out in the real world, which is a non-construct. So that's one possibility, that we respond with awe. This is the most amazing thing we could ever learn. That's all our limiting beliefs are lies. That's all our limiting beliefs are, just ways that we have of preventing ourselves from seeing further, seeing that life's bigger and more magnificent than we gave it credit for, because we just want life or the universe to fit in with our shoddy little, to use Krishnamurti's word, that's his favourite word, shoddy little schemes of things, and then we feel delighted because we've matched reality with a shoddy, banal, crappy little schemes of things. We feel great. So when we see that our shoddy schemes are shoddy, they'll be swept away in a breeze and they're gone. They're nothing. Self-imposed limitation, self-imposed misery, self-imposed boredom, bureaucracy, the bureaucracy of the thinking mind. So when we see that everything's a lot bigger than I gave it credit for being, that there's nothing greater than that. That is freedom. But the other possibilities, we see that, and instead of awe, we feel terror and we run in the opposite direction because it's too big for us. The world is too big. We like everything to be petty and kind of superficial as hell. We don't like anything profound. We don't like freedom. We want to carry on being slaves. So then we run in the opposite direction. And at this current point in human history, we're using science to kind of using degenerate science, returning science into degenerate scientism to try and feel that we know something, that we've got this concrete knowledge. And on all sides, we hear this trumpet, evidence-based this, evidence-based that, science has shown, experts have just got whatever the hell it is. And all that is the sound of degenerate scientism.